I'm also a licensed, I guess they call them religious scientists still, but a practitioner in the Church of Spiritual Living,
Mm,
and founded by Ernest Holmes. It's
mm,
an offshoot of Christian Science.
mm,
And there was a time when I left my previous community and didn't have any place to go. And they were reading a book that I wanted to talk to someone about, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So I went to uh, Creative Life Center here in Houston and met an incredible group of people. I thought they were very strange at first because they were very loving and they hugged each other in church. And there was parts of the service where uh, they would stop and the entire congregation would get up and walk around hugging each other. And I was like, whoa, this is a weird place, you know, because who goes to church like that? And coming from the Buddhist background, it was quite a bit different. And it was a very tactile situation. So I stayed with them for a while and learned uh, the religious science uh, philosophy, which is not too far off of Buddhism. And I think, when you find the truth, no matter how it's expressed, the truth is still the same.
mm.
And, essentially, I would say that the church itself and the community there healed me back to life uh, because I was pretty damaged by the experience I had with my last community. And then after getting out of that negativity, I was able to find a new home with the Nichiren Shu tradition that I'm in now.
And did the well, I'm really glad that you found this space and that you've kind of continued to have this element in your life of was it creative living or is that what the more umbrella
Center,
organization? Hmm?
Center for Spiritual Living.
Center for Spiritual Living,
Yeah.
and that you found that place that you had a healthy amount of trepidation or kind of like they're hugging. This is not what's going on here, but you also had this kind of it was part of your healing journey as you
Right.
and as you deepened even it and it has these helpful correlations with Buddhist practice too, so that kind of helped you kind of bridge to the next community. And as far as like what you were healing from, if you don't mind me asking, like what was the center giving you that you needed? Was it just kind of a full sense of community, an unconditional sense of support, a framework and a built-in structure that you can just kind of go and blend and like weave yourself in pretty quickly? I was just kind of curious what it was helping you recover from.
Um, I had started in my former group at about 11 or 12, 13 years old. And so it was a very supportive community. It was families, and all of the families were much like mine, the mixed race Japanese American kind of family back then. So I moved to Houston, and that was an entirely different experience. And there was a lot of negativity. There was racism. And when something happened, it was more, you don't have enough faith, you're not practicing correctly type of attitude. And so, because I had been so deeply involved for so many years, it took me a long time to get to a place where I could accept I did know what I was talking about. And I was not wrong about the things I objected to. And what creative life allowed me to do was to be in a place where people said to me all the time that they were grateful for the good in my life and never to say to me, you don't know what you're talking about, but this constant input of, being grateful for the good in my life, that I could be grateful for the good in my life, was also very healing. And these people, I spent in class with them, learning about the tradition and the philosophy. And so they were very instrumental in supporting me to shaving my head for the first time, and supporting me in taking my vows to become a priest.
That's a wonderful thing that this community helped you. Yeah, they would there wasn't necessarily it seems like any kind of judgment as far as your transitioning into another community. They kind of were helping you go through the ordination processes. They were
Yeah.
helping you. They were kind of guiding that and fostering that. Well, I'm so glad that you had that experience where you could land somewhere, catch your breath, and actually have some healing happen. And then as you developed further into Nichiren Shu, and the I was reading about your biography, and there was a mention that you did have long hair, and that you had beautiful hair and all this, and then this shaving the head was kind of like it it not just changed your aesthetic, your look, but I was curious if it had like a lot more intensity to that process was a lot more intense than maybe someone like myself who just sees it going and might as well get it going. So
Yeah, it was pretty intense. It was almost down to my knees. And I just really loved my hair. I came from a position of hating my hair because it was unmanageable and wasn't like everybody else's hair, too curly, too wavy. And I got to a place where I really enjoyed it. It was my personal blanket. It was, comfort and safety. And when I had to cut it, it was like, wow. And I understood the reasoning of, not being attached to physical appearance and, all the rituals of taking care of yourself. Um, and when I finally cut it, and the first time I saw myself without any hair, I just cried. And one of my friends came up to me and said, I have lipstick. The lipstick might help you feel better. And that just cracked me up. And we went out to have a late breakfast. It was at night. And we were sitting together, and this man came up to me and he said, I never thought I would find a bald-headed woman attractive. He says, but you look really good. And it was like, okay, it made my whole evening.
oh, good. Oh,
So without the lipstick.
yeah. Wow. Oh, good. There's I mean, yeah, that's it's a major if you're getting rid of your blanket, that's a part of you.
Yeah.
And then in one fell swoop, that's taken away. So I'm glad that there was this uh kind of spontaneous support figure that kind of came into your life, and helped you move past that. Uh, and as you moved through your more committed ordination process, I mean, it was like about 5 years of traveling back and forth, of 35-day stays, and um, conferences and meetings with your uh, shonin. And uh, were there particular moments that felt like you were, I don't know, like that like this was it every time, every step of the way? Was it kind of like there elements that were, I'm deepening it and that this feels fulfilling and right? Or were there also moments and areas where it felt like there was doubt involved as well? Because it's such a big commitment, and it was an extended commitment. And I know that you have a family, and here you are based in Houston, going to Japan every once in a while. So I was just curious what that experience was like overall.
I think that part in some respects was relatively easy because I'd been involved in the practice for so long. It was just more directed. And it was essentially a fulfillment of a dream of service that I'd had since I was a child. I don't know if that showed up anywhere, that I was inspired by the Nun Story with Audrey Hepburn,
Hmm.
uh, which was a movie about her becoming a nun and going to serve in the Congo. And she ended up leaving the convent at the end of the movie. And also back then, as a young girl, I fell in love with Jeffrey Hunter, who played King of Kings in that movie. So, all this stuff was based on MGM and their ideas of, beautiful people serving the community. But my real role model was my family that took in people and made people at home. So those ideas kind of merged together. And so joining Nichiren Shu and being able to follow the path of priesthood was a fulfillment of that early dream, even as it was difficult. I had to challenge a lot of my inner feelings about being a female in a male environment, because I was at that point the only female engaged in from the Western perspective. There's plenty of women in Japan who are priests, but I was the only one here in the States. And so that was difficult. And since I grew up with a brother, it was okay in that respect of being able to handle challenged by men and being able to stand up to that. But there were times it was like, oh my gosh, I hated being a female
Hmm.
uh, simply because it felt like there was an extreme difference in treatment. Um, but I got over it, and I learned to really stand up for myself and recognize the importance of standing up for myself as a female, but also just as a person. Um, and recognizing that when there's a battle to uh, advance on your path, that it is entirely up to you or to me how it's going to work out, how it's going to go. And I learned that I had a core of steel in some respects, that there's no way you're stopping me. And so that helped me to get through a lot of it.
Wow. Was there one instance in particular where that idea really coalesced, where you have this inner core that is immovable and unshakable, and from then on you kind of built upon that, or was it kind of this slowly shedding away of layers of doubt or other things, and then you kind of slowly kind of started to see this part of yourself emerge as something that is fully grounded and actually propels you forward?
I think it keeps going. Depends on the situation. When I was in the monastery, I didn't speak enough Japanese. I spoke everyday conversational Japanese. But in terms of Buddhist practice and things, I had to really struggle getting to understand what was going on. And the group I was in was very helpful. We were like sisters. So I really came to appreciate the Japanese woman and also my mother, uh, because I had never realized that she was very strong, that she had that core of steel until I was in the monastery, spending that time isolated from language and culture, everything that was comfortable for me. And at night, I realized how lonely my mother must have been to come to the United States in a different culture and have people tell her to go home and just hate on her because she was Japanese. And I didn't find the hatred, but that loneliness, that isolation, and how, yes, they were very helpful and tried to support me, but the language barrier was tremendous. And that's when I started to understand what strength was, especially from a woman's perspective, because the Japanese women are incredibly strong. And most people don't see that because the notion of women as these very soft-spoken, very nice people, nice women, you know, like dolls. Because I think so many folks treated my mother like a little doll, and they're not like that at all. So it's like, okay, it's a hidden core that they can go through life and put up with all that they put up with and still come out on the other side and still be strong and not having lost their sense of self.
Yeah. Wow, that is a it's a remarkable uh, experience that you had where you were going through monastery training, and that not only kind of created a community, like a strong community bond with the people that you were in there with, the other women that were pursuing ordination, but also to it connected you with your family, especially with your mom, and also maybe a little element of also just Japanese women, um, both the immigrant experience of Japanese and Japanese American women, but also just Japanese women in identifying their very intensely strong core of strength that they have. And when it comes to these groups of women that you were with at various stages throughout your ordination process, did have you kind of remained in touch with some of these people? Because it's kind of a tight knit group. They're like maybe 16 at some point, and maybe a little bit larger, maybe a little bit smaller. Um, I'd imagine some of them are spread out all over the world, but I just was curious if there is this kind of continued uh, bond that is sustained.
We normally get together as priests once a year. It's changing. Um, and so I would meet, especially those who also work as missionaries in different countries, because we gather as international priests. But I do have a few friends over there that I still am in touch with. And when I go, we try to connect.
Hmm. And does going to would a missionary trip, or would a trip to other parts of the world within a Nichiren Shu context, would that be something that you've done before, or would be interested in going to and kind of exploring how different cultures absorb and take to Nichiren Shu?
I've been to different places, to Indonesia and Sri Lanka and India, and able to visit some Nichiren Shu temples there and participate. I was able to participate as part of a wedding in Sri Lanka, which was really cool. Um, and their opening, the official opening of that temple is happening this month, but I don't think I'll be able to go. Um, yeah, we stay in touch, those of us who are not based in Japan,
Hmm.
and especially the women stay in some measure of touch. But most of us are solo women in different places.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I do want to kind of get into your experience leading a sangha in Houston and what that experience was like, because there are some really wonderful photographs of that, of the bishop's passing of the certificate to you, and the establishment of you there, um, and and that whole process, and how it's been since. But I briefly want to talk about that Sri Lankan wedding. What was the you participated within a Nichiren
Yes.
capacity? Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yes. Um, it was the gentleman there. His name is Gen, and we would always tease each other like being brother and sister from a different mother. So the Sri Lankans are just lovely, lovely people. And we had gone to uh, visit them from out of the Malaysia temple. And they were bringing gifts for people in their community out there just to, help people with their food needs and housing needs, things like that. And so that was the purpose of the trip out of Malaysia. And we met the people from Sri Lanka and supported them in whatever they were doing. They took us to their school that they had established, a Buddhist school for their kids. So there was a lot of stuff happening. Also, the interfaith of the different kinds of Buddhism. And so his daughter was getting married, and she invited me to come with the other priest, and I was able just to be in the priest group. The ceremony was done by others, but I was as part of the supporting group.
Mm.
And it was just lovely because there was the drumming and the dancing and the different kinds of traditions that are interwoven into the traditional Buddhist ceremony. And so that was really just very heartwarming.
Yeah. And all within the scope of like a celebration too. So it's just like just joyful merger and joyful interplay of everyone coming together. Um, well, I'm so glad that you had that experience, and I'm so glad that they're also soon having a temple opening, that they're going to be celebrating more soon. And with your experience coming to Houston, just like we're talking about how the people that you ordained with having been spread out, some of which might be in uh, paired off or communities, but others being kind of lone as they go into their different spaces. How has your experience been being a part of a Houston-based Sangha, and then your transition into the role of bishop, and what it's been like since 2007?
Slow.
Mm.
Houston is, despite being a very modern place and progressive in some respects, and a very diverse city. It was thought of to be one of the most diverse cities in the country for a long time. I think there's something like 180 different languages spoken here. Um, it is very diverse. You can find anything here. When I first came, Houston, I would say, was a little bit behind every place else I'd ever lived, but it caught up really fast because of the oil industry and all that boom, and then the decline of the oil industry. Um, but it is very much in the Bible Belt. And it's the one thing that I didn't expect, because I'm thinking Texas, even I lived in El Paso before. And so I'm thinking El Paso is a very different kind of Texas. And so I'm thinking, oh, yeah, Texas is pretty progressive. And I get down here and it's like, whoa, not that progressive, kind of backwards.
Mm.
Uh, and this was at around 1980 or so. And yeah, it's taken a long time to see the advancement of the city itself as a place that supported diversity.
Mm.
And so when I started practicing with Nichiren Shu here, there were families, we had about 20 families that got together and started, but that soon, within a year, split. And because some did not want to focus on starting a temple. And those of us that did continued on. And we were doing fairly well until COVID. And so we're still recovering from COVID,
Mm.
trying to get people to come back to appearing in person. And part of the problem we've always had is that our membership is scattered. We have people in South America and in Florida and Tennessee and Ohio. I mean, they're just scattered everywhere. And so the base in Houston sometimes is not that large. And so we're working on re-establishing that, because our dream has always been to have our own temple. But we also understand we cannot compare ourselves to those that are in places like Sri Lanka and Indonesia, where the sense of community and Buddhism is very strong.
Mm.
A Bible Belt, a lot of folks are pretty frightened about something that's different. We had, I'll never forget, having a group of chaplaincy students come. And one of the statues that we have enshrined in our temple is that of the demon queen Kishimoji. And she looks like a demon. And for us, it's the fact that as a demon, she was also able to achieve her awakening, in a sense, to stop taking human children, and went on to lead the rest of her life protecting the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra. And but they couldn't hear that story. They just heard demon and out the door. So um, it's an interesting uh, journey to work with folks who are so set on the stories that they've heard without understanding the rest of the story, not
Mm.
wanting to hear the rest of the story.
Is it a particular, like, as far as like how the Christian framework of Houston is it one particular type of Christianity that is the most populous um part of the community, the greater Christian community, or is it also kind of diverse and has a bunch of different uh groups that make up the Bible Belt through that runs through Houston?
I think there's a lot of diversity there. I
Mm,
do know that a lot of the bigger churches are, I think, maybe leaning Baptist,
mm, mm. Okay.
and different kinds of Baptists. You know.
Yeah.
But we
And
also have
mm,
every other kind of religious community here as well.
yeah. Well, it's definitely concerning to hear about that kind of that unwillingness, uh unwillingness to have an interfaith connection or dialogue or even just kind of exploration, and how that kind of hurts your ability to be visible, and hurts your ability to have people come in and kind of try things out. It does do you find that, being in Houston instead of Sri Lanka or instead of somewhere in Japan, that the makeup of how you do service for Nichiren Shu in Houston has to be uh, kind of laid out a certain way, or do you do your best to have as much lineage integrity kind of come through and land in the way that you like to manifest it or express it?
We have worked hard to uh, make it accessible. So we do services in English sometimes, and always in the traditional Shinjoku, which is a Japanese pronunciation of ancient Chinese. And most people like that. It's kind of interesting because the English takes much longer. And while you can chant rhythmically in English, um, it doesn't allow you to just get into the flow of it because you're fully aware of everything you're saying. And sometimes the words are not good words. For example, one part talks about perverted people. And so for some folks, hearing that perverted people, it takes them off in a different direction and not the one that Buddhism speaks about, to having a person who's perverted by delusions and wrong views. Uh, so there's a lot more explaining to do and trying to change someone's mindset about those kinds of things. Uh, but as a group here in the United States, we really worked hard to try and maintain the integrity of how we do service, even as all of us are individually doing it our own way.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that, like for myself, like I have a more of a Zen background, and I participate in a Japanese American sangha here in California, and we chant in Japanese, and we chant the Heart Sutra in Japanese, and there is this kind of ritual language element that ties me in, a little bit more than if I were to have all my associations with all of the English words that I know. It could send me off into a different spot, or it can otherwise just be distracting. I don't really know. Maybe it's ultimately not that at all. It's just I'm relatively new and I'm just trying to figure it out. But there is something about that language. I understand that effort to make things accessible and see um, how that can work, but also to how actually maintaining a linguistic connection to the lineage is actually something that can be appealing and accessible in its own way. Um, and as far as the um, interfaith thing, uh, as far as interfaith work and interfaith experiences that you've had, it does seem like it is a major through line for your work and for your interests. And I know that you work with incarcerated individuals, and that there is an organization that you're working with that works with Buddhists and Muslims within that environment. And I was curious what that experience has been like, and what you've taken away from it, and what you like to bring to it.
Well, we're still waiting to get approval for that program,
Mm-mm.
but the Muslims and the Buddhists are chomping at the bit
Mm.
because they really want to do the program. And unfortunately, the Texas prison system, who knows what they're thinking right now. They're always asking for new programs. And then when you come up with one, it has floated around for 2 years. So we have resubmitted it
Mm.
for their approval. And I'm also trying to get in touch with the head of the rehabilitation unit. We have done the program with just Buddhist, and it's been very successful in the sense of creating community and allowing the guys to have safe space so they can deal with some of their issues, because we address traumas of racism, traumas of incarceration, traumas of sexual assault. Um, Also, learning how to support each other, learning how to care about each other. And so those who have been with us the longest have experienced, every iteration of us doing the program that we're proposing. Is the only difference is adding the Muslims in, so that crossing the faith lines can become a thing where they find common ground and also become prayer partners for each other.
Mm.
So that's the new thing that's being introduced in this program. And so as I said, they're still waiting. We're still waiting uh, so that we can get the space to do the work we need to do.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's really disappointing to hear that there are some roadblocks in the way for this program that, as someone that is trying to serve this community, you are excited and eager to get into it, and the people that want it and would benefit from it can't quite have it. And so there's this is red tape or whatever it is that's getting in the way, that is stopping everything. But is there as you've kind of researched for it, as you've researched for building the program, um, I'm just for anyone that is also listening and wants to work on something similar within their communities, and also just wants to have a bit greater understanding of the commonalities and the common ground between Buddhism and Islam. What have you found as far as the things that could help create a bridge or create a sense of prayer community between the two?
I think largely the devotional aspect, because as Buddhists, we're always concerned with faith, practice, and study, and how we implement that in our lives to build faith. You don't have to have it when you start, but how your foundation and practice allows you to build faith. And then what happens to you as a result of that faith, that you change. And also that learning how to deal with others, and to be able to talk about the same kind of things, the transformations that happen to you as a result of your spiritual practice. And the idea is to really unite together even if there's differences in the faith traditions, but to be able to pray for another person, which also develops your capacity of love and to cherish and to build stronger community. So we've seen that happen just on a more superficial level, I think. And we wanted to see it go deeper because they do tend to gasho, to each other and understand what that means, following the path of Bodhisattva Jofukyo, to I respect you, I'll never despise you. I know you'll be a Buddha someday. And there's the same kind of feeling in what we've seen devotionally from the Muslim community and how they treat each other. So we're looking at the areas where we find what seems similar.
And I've never really done in any official capacity, but also just in general, I haven't done much interfaith work where I'm working with two different groups and finding those connections and finding those areas where there are shared fundamental concepts within them. And is there ever an urge, or do you anticipate an urge from either group to raise a hand and say, well, what about they believe this and this is a core element and this kind of doesn't align with something that I believe, and so how can we find a common ground when something so fundamental is so fundamentally different from what I have going on?
I think just from my personal experience doing interfaith work, there's always a way to connect it. Because of the fundamental idea of compassion and love is present everywhere.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter what your tradition is, that's a part of it.
Mm.
And folks can deny it, but the truth is the truth, it's there. And it may be having to, shove the other stuff out of the way that prevents one from seeing that this is the same as that is.
Mm.
And it interfaith work can be very tough sometimes. And I'm part of an interfaith community here in Houston. It was a faith leaders community of Greater Houston. And we've had some issues, some serious issues. And so we're kind of on a downside right now and having to pull it back together again also. We did incredible work, for example, with the sponsoring a program of Black people and Asians, because that tends to be a community, those two communities have some tension. And it was really quite remarkable what happened, that these people got together and they were able to share experiences. And I wish we had kept it going, but I'm also involved in that internationally and within the US as well, with the Black and Asian communities working together.
Mm. Is there a place where internationally that you've been working with those two communities in particular that you've seen uh, some programs or some initiatives work the best, and you kind of use them as an example or a model of how maybe some other communities elsewhere around the world can learn from or to benefit from?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I've just recently, well, in the past few years, have been more engaged with the Asian community. And a lot of it came out of California, actually, from Duncan Rukin Williams. Do you know him?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So the May We Gather program,
Mm.
he's been sponsoring and just incredible things, especially the exhibit at the Japanese American Museum of all the names of the incarcerated folks. And In fact, I think it was March of this year, we went to Antioch, California, and did a program there to celebrate the founding of that Chinese American community that was fundamentally destroyed and vanished, you know. And the city of Antioch issued an apology for what had happened. So those kinds of things are happening. The Sudo for Solidarity, which made thousands and thousands of cranes and are working with the African American community on reparations. And my guys participated, the incarcerated folks participated in making cranes, which I have a ton of here that I have to get it out to California so they could use them.
Yeah.
But they jumped on that.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know, pulling all of these different threads together and having, especially for those who are incarcerated, find value in their lives, that they're still able to contribute.
Yeah. And then you have this physical representation of how they can contribute in, you know, in these cranes that you will be giving, and as part of that effort, that, no, they can't necessarily be there in person, but there is something that represents their care that can be
Yeah.
brought, and fully contribute to. And have you, for a long time, I think you have been working with incarcerated people for some time, and what began that, and what have your experiences been like as you've delved deeper into that community and serving that community?
I started back in my 20s. I worked for the Bureau of Prisons. Uh, and I was the administrative assistant to the head of a halfway house. But it became more of being in the role of sister, daughter, mother, whatever, to these guys as they were coming out. Um, I eventually left because of the admin. You know, I didn't have any trouble from the guys, but the administration. So, and my father ended up taking, well, I got him his job there when he retired from the military. So he ended up being one of the counselors there. Um, and I also participated in going out to prisons back then when they had groups established for people who were getting out. And so they brought in particular, young women. So these people, when they're coming out, could learn how to deal with women rather than coming on the way they come on. And so that was a fascinating experience. So when I was invited to come out here, um, there was a group that was going out to visit prisons, and a woman who was leaving because she had married one of the guys when he got out, decided not to participate any longer and asked me to take over her function. So I did. I started out at the Walls unit, and it was about the same time as I was going through my priesthood training. And so the difficulty I had then was people wanting to mix everything. It's like, no, I can't do the mixing. I can do this, but not that. And so I went to Estelle and the one at Wallace Pack, and I'm back at Walls again now. Um, and just started trying to connect with these folks. I had these weird ideas because I knew about, you know, the drug community aspect of it. And those people I could relate to, you know, I'd grown up in the 60s, 70s, you know, all of that stuff back then. And so I could relate to their experiences. And I had this weird mindset about, well, I'm not going to deal with murderers or sex offenders. And guess what I got? All of those things. And fortunately, I did not know anything about what they had done. The real issue when we first started going out there was that the group we had was 100% white, and the three of us that started out with the program were all African descended women. And so everybody was like, what are they doing in there with these white guys? And these white guys were largely neo-Nazis. And so we didn't know, they didn't know. And there was quite a bit of tension when we started because of who was going to control the group and how things were going to work. But still, it wasn't until I think 3 years later that we learned what we had started off with and why it was so difficult tension-wise, because they never said. And they were, in fact, using the meetings to talk their plans or whatever. Some of them, but some of them really got into what we were teaching and what we were sharing. And I'd say the majority of them changed. Couple of them, it took a few more years. You know, I received a letter from one of the men who had initially started this as from the white national perspective and was trying to take over. And he wrote me a letter of apology, and that he had finally understood what we were talking about in terms of Buddhism.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that is yeah, I'd imagine those first meetings being extremely tense if there wasn't like this uh openness or like this understanding where everyone was coming from, and when people are coming from where they're coming from and there isn't any kind of introduction, they can just backs to the wall, not sure how to engage. And even still, I mean, I really admire your group's courage to stick with, and then also too, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to come from where these individuals were coming from, and to open up, to learn, and then to one day, some of them apologize, and um, to write, a personal letter to say of gratitude for what you had done
Yeah.
under all those circumstances. It's really incredible. And uh, when it comes to your work with incarcerated individuals, in like maybe now or throughout, I mean, is a lot of the basis of the framework around a Nichiren Shu perspective, like is that like the more or less the basis that you're bringing to these sessions, or is it kind of, I'm going to bring you Buddhism, we're going to talk about the Lotus Sutra maybe the most, but is it more broad than all of that?
We do fundamentally just Lotus Sutra, the Nichiren Shu tradition. What the prison system did, and this is so arbitrary, instead of allowing us just to be Buddhists, they created this category called Eastern religions. So anything that wasn't Abrahamic falls under the heading of Eastern religions. So I may get Hindus and sometimes a few Jews, pagans. Well, there's another group, I think it's part of the Islamic tradition, but they're called the 20 percenters or 9 percenters or something. And so you'll have all these different groups mixed in. And I just let them know all I'm able to bring to you is about Nichiren Shu and the Lotus Sutra. And that's all you're going to get from me. And so it works out. Most of the guys like it because, I mean, we're teaching them very basic practice. And, those who get into it rather deeply, you can see they make major changes in their lives. And those are usually the people that act as the coordinators for the group. They take responsibility for the whole group. And those are the ones that we see the greatest amount of change because they've really dedicated themselves to the practice. It's interesting. I think that when working with these folks, and just with anybody who in practice does not follow the practice, and they think sometimes that they can fool you. It's like, no, I mean, we can see it. Your life isn't advancing the way it should if you're really practicing that way. And so that's been a remarkable experience to witness the change in folks, because we start from the standpoint of that there's not enough love in their life. And so we're working from the perspective of self-love and then love for your brothers. And that has worked pretty well. We do a lot of circle practices, and my grandson donated his collection of McDonald's Happy Meal toys. So they're used as touchstones. You can get a little angry bird and say, I'm angry today, so I'm going to hold the angry bird, and then they talk about it. But also knowing that everything that happens in that circle, in that council, stays there. It doesn't go outside without permission. So that has been very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the bringing of these objects from your family, just like bringing them in and using them, and having some elements that are of a world that is recognizable, and that maybe some other kind of more uh deep or more, I don't know, esoteric elements might not reach, or might not be applicable or accessible just yet, but having these other elements kind of come in to help the conversation. And is there a chapter or a story within the Lotus Sutra that you find the most applicable or the most uh, engaging for these kind of conversations? Is there one that comes up that really people identify with the most?
It is that Bodhisattva Jofukyo in
Mm,
chapter 20 of the Lotus Sutra, uh,
mm,
that because of saying to each other, I respect you, I'll never despise you, I know you'll be a Buddha someday.
yeah,
Uh, and to use that even when dealing with the guards, all the other staff, because they're not treated well by some folks. And that's unfortunate. Uh, there are some folks who are by the book folks, and so they'll go by the book. But some folks, especially I think in some of the volunteers that I heard when I've been in training classes with some of them, it's like, why are you here if you believe the way you believe? That these people, they're getting 3 squares a day and they have a roof over their head. So what are they complaining about? It's like, you don't see it. You don't see the lack of humanity, the lack of respect for people as people. And if you're believing that way, I don't know how you can do this work, but they
right.
do the work. And it's unfortunately, TDC hasn't been more expansive in its welcome. Because if you're a Christian, there's everything happening for you. The chapels have big crosses and all the supplies they need. But in some instances, we can no longer keep our altar setups in the prison. So they have to come in with us every week, which is quite a hassle.
Yeah.
But, we keep going because it depends on who the head warden is and who the chaplain is, how they get along, and what they get to keep.
Yeah.
Uh,
Gosh, well, thank you for doing that, for doing the work that you do. It is so important and so crucial. I'm sure it's very well received, and even for the people that it takes a few years for them to recognize it. But you do this, and then you do the extra work, right? You have to bring your altars and you have to bring your supplies in. So I really do appreciate it a great deal. And when it when it comes to just this idea, even just outside of work within the prison system, just this idea of that you mentioned about self-love. And I feel like a lot of people in an everyday sense struggle with that, where they might have some doubts about their own ability and have some issues with confidence or whatever it is, and they haven't had that enough opportunities to see that strength core that we talked about earlier. Uh, what is something that you would offer somebody to have them find within themselves something to love or to engage with that sort of practice?
And I think that in so many respects, we're taught that there's not a lot of good in us. I think, and not to belabor sounding like an anti-Christian, that we were conceived in sin, born in sin, and it's just about that sin. And I think that may be the root of some of it. And I'd like to share with folks, if they're willing to practice, to just begin to understand that everything about us is perfect, it's whole, and it's complete for the path that we're walking. It may be horrible, some of the things that have happened to us, but they're preparation for us to walk the path in the way we need to walk it. That we have to be able to look at everything that happens to us as a benefit and not feel like, oh, this happened to me because I'm horrible. No, there's a purpose in this happening to us. We set a cause, and we're living our effects of all of the causes that we've made. But it also gives us an understanding of a path that can help others. That we can, each of us, be a gateway for others to walk a better path for themselves. And that's what we're doing with our lives. So we're perfectly gifted, if you will, by the experiences we have so that we can become the leaders for a particular path of awakening. Because I really believe that it's more important for us to have many, many folks walking the path. And Nichiren said it, that it's more important to have 1,000 people take one step than one person to take 1,000 steps, because you're covering more ground with 1,000 folks taking one step. And each of those 1,000 folks becomes a gateway for someone else. And to be able to walk your path, accept the mistakes, accept the wrong things that you've done, and be able to see the benefit of having made that mistake and how you can correct your life and correct your path is a gift that can be given to a lot of folks.
That is these are all really empowering, re-empowering things to hear. And it's just really, really wonderfully said. So thank you for sharing that. It is I often forget all the time the value in my own experience walking my path and accepting things as opportunities to deepen or opportunities to demonstrate strength, and then with those actions develop a sense of self that can heal or feel whole enough to then I can help other people emerge from their delusion or from their pain, and find a way to help have them go continue their healing journey. And also too, what was really helpful was to hear uh, the cause and the effect, where where we are and the conditions that we are in, there are lifetimes that have preceded this,
Yeah.
and everyone's lifetimes that have preceded this into this whole. And if we all together take that one step in all different directions, whatever they are, wherever you're standing, that can cover more ground and be extremely helpful. Wow, thank you. And I had just a couple more questions, and these are relatively small, but I do want to ask them because they've been burning red hot for me. And I was curious because there's a Lions Roar article where you had mentioned if you are not yourself, who would you be? And you mentioned that you would be a performer in Cirque du Soleil. And so I just wanted to kind of get into to that. So why does that come up for you if you weren't who you are?
I used to be a performer.
Oh,
Um, in my younger years, I was a belly dancer, and it was something I loved and had a great time doing. Um, and so I thought that's what I would do. I'd go to work for Cirque du Soleil and travel the world.
wow. That's great. That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah. 'Cause in my head, I was imagining, the fire torches and the aerial like silks and all that. And I thought that if it wasn't who you were, then I'd be like, you do something that was the opposite. And so that's wonderful. I also I share a performer background. I did some stage theater work and things like that. And so I feel that. I feel that that resonates with me. And then you are a fan of Japanese hot springs, and I was curious if you were able to sneak away during ordination, or even just now in your life now that you've been able to enjoy some of those, and what that experience is like. What is the Japanese hot spring experience like?
Heaven. After uh, my time at the monastery before my final ordination, and after that big ceremony, we went to the Minami Alps in Japan, and there are different levels where the hot springs are natural and they run through the different rocks and different temperatures. So you clean up and you get in the hot tub, and you can go sit out, lay outside in the hot water. Some of them are rooftops, uh, really incredible stuff. And just lay in a hot tub. It's pure heaven. I was even trying to figure out how I could put a hot tub like that
Yeah.
in my house. But, you know, we don't have natural hot springs running through Houston,
Right,
lit
right.
up, so can't do that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, well, I wish you many opportunities to come where you can do a hot spring adventure and have that back in your life. That's wonderful. Um, and my final question is a two-part, but you don't go wherever you'd like with it. But basically, is there anything that you would want to promote, like whether it's a foundation or a cause or a thing that you're working on or writing, something that you'd want to get more ears and eyes on and spread the word about. And then if there's anything that you would want to give to somebody as advice to someone walking the path at any stage where that you learn something on your way through it so far, and this is something you want to give to somebody as they are where they are.
I would always remind folks to remember that they are always at a point of choice, that no matter what happens and or what we encounter, that we have the choice to suffer or to choose a way to rise above it. Uh, or we can be attached to that negative thing that happens instead of using it to, as we say, turn poison into medicine and come out with a better outcome. Um, and that was grounded in my learning the difficulty of coming into this world as a mixed race female and all of the challenges that I've had as a result, to try and find a purpose in all of that is what led me to understand the question of choice, that I have a choice. I could suffer it or I could use it to my advantage and to the advantage of the work that I choose to do in life. And once I did that, everything changed. And so I think I tend to think of um, people talk so much about no self and emptiness and all of that, and that's great. But the reality of life is that we have to deal with ourselves. And I tend to think of that now as an expedient, that this is how you develop the bodhisattva in you, the Buddha in you. And once you get that, you can choose to be a Buddha or a bodhisattva, or you can be, an ogre down in the pits of hell. It's up to you. So that's what I would share with folks.
Yeah.
And I think what I would want folks to look at is how so many different folks in the world are incarcerated, not necessarily behind bars, but by how we as a society tend to view them. That we all have to, well, in fact, we're all incarcerated by what we have been taught, by people we loved and trusted, so that we have to find a way out of that kind of mental, emotional, spiritual incarceration that allows us to stay separate from the people around us. Because that's why we're here, right? To connect, to get in the flow of that oneness and create a world that is open for all of us. Because it is our world. And we have to do something about it.
Both really wonderful things to hear. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing both. And the one that's really ringing true, I mean, and maybe there's like a through line too, where, there's this sense of having your own, being captive, holding yourself captive, from being able to walk a healing path. It's so much easier to know the demons that you have and know your limits, but to move beyond it takes a lot of courage. And I have so many opportunities for practice that rattle around in my brain, or judgments or whatever is that come up just from within. So why not use them as fuel to propel myself into a better place. Myokei Shonin, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really appreciate you talking with me and sharing so much and being generous with your time. I am sorry to hear that there's this blockage that's happening with a program that you're doing with interfaith. I hope that is lifted, and that you're able to do the work that you do. But thank you so much for everything that you do. You serve an international community that needs it, and it's very inspiring. So thank you for all your wise words and for the things that you do for everyone.
Well, thank you.